Are we recording right now?
Oh my God, we are.
Babes, welcome back. Good morning, good day, good night. Happy whenever you are listening. We love you, babes. And cheers to you. And yes, before you even ask, those are mango mimosas.
Cheers! Handing over the glass. And there we go.
Because, babes, we really need to talk about dreams today.
Oh, we really do.
Because you are fully, completely going through it right now.
I am. I really, truly am. And honestly, it is like starting to bleed into my waking hours in the most inconvenient ways imaginable. Because for years now, there has been this highly specific recurring phenomenon happening in my sleep.
Like a nightmare.
Kind of, yeah. It induces this visceral, just suffocating panic. Like,
Yeah.
I will be in a situation, maybe I'm standing in a crowded room, or maybe I'm just across the table from someone, right? And I have something absolutely urgent to say.
I hate that feeling.
Right. The stakes feel incredibly high. So I go to speak, my mouth is moving, the physical mechanics of like forming words are happening in my jaw. I can feel the breath in my throat, but absolutely no sound comes out.
Wait, literally nothing?
Nothing. Complete silence. It is the most paralyzing trap you can imagine. Have you ever experienced anything like that?
Oh my God, no. That is genuinely terrifying. It is like your own body is just mutinying against you.
It really is.
Just listening to you describe that sheer lack of agency makes my chest feel tight. It is like sleep paralysis, but surgically targeted at your vocal cords.
That is exactly what it feels like.
I am deeply intrigued by why our brains would subject us to that specific torture, but I'm also completely confused because my nighttime landscape is the exact opposite of that.
Really?
Yeah, my mind does not trap me in silence. My mind throws me into a high-budget, chaotic, deeply unhinged carnival.
Okay, walk me through the carnival. What exactly is the subconscious production value we are talking about here?
Oh, it is a Bravo producer's absolute fever dream. Like, I am thrown into scenarios that defy all structural logic, but the emotional reality of them is so grounded that I never question it in the moment.
Give me an example.
Okay, so 2 nights ago, I was trying to secure a perimeter for a zombie apocalypse, which is stressful enough, right?
Naturally. Standard Tuesday night.
Right. But I had to do it while actively working a dinner rush at a Wendy's with my high school ex-boyfriend.
I'm sorry, Wendy's?
A literal Wendy's. And out of nowhere, completely random background characters from my life, like my 3rd grade gym teacher, will casually stroll up to the counter and start intensely critiquing my fry salting technique while the undead are clawing at the drive-thru window.
That is incredible.
The details are what get me. I can smell the fryer grease. I can feel the exact texture of the polyester visor. It makes zero sense, but it feels so intensely, indisputably real that I wake up needing a vacation.
That is a masterclass in absurdism. But it perfectly sets up the internal psychological debate, right? Like, do these nightly cinematic events actually hold deep structural meaning?
Yes.
Or are they our subconscious desperately trying to slip a coded message under the door of our waking minds? Or, and this is where I usually lean, are they just random neurological garbage?
Yeah.
Just the brain taking out the trash and misfiring a few narrative neurons along the way.
Oh, I completely refuse to believe it. It's just trash.
Yeah.
Think about it. Our brains are infinitely complex machines. I firmly believe dreams are the ultimate diagnostic tool for our emotional style.
Okay, diagnose me then.
When you are dreaming about your vocal cords failing, that is a glaring neon sign from your psyche.
Yeah.
It is your soul trying to communicate that you feel unheard. Or maybe there's a boundary in your waking life that you're failing to enforce.
No boundary.
Yes. And my Wendy's zombie apocalypse. That is clearly my inner child trying to process the trauma of chaotic environments and lingering anxieties about past relationships. It has to mean something.
See, if we look at the activation synthesis model of dreaming, the random garbage theory actually holds a lot of water.
Boo.
Let me finish. The brainstem generates random electrical impulses during REM sleep, and the forebrain, which is desperate for narrative structure, just scrambles to weave those random signals into a cohesive story. So you get zombies and French fries.
I reject the science.
However, I will leave a highly sarcastic, slightly terrified what-if door open for you. Because if my own mind is intentionally silencing me to teach me a lesson about boundaries, I need to file a formal grievance with management.
Exactly.
But let's indulge the theory. Let's push this into a slightly delusional, tipsy pivot.
Yes. Let the mango mimosas guide us. Where are we pivoting?
What if we abandon psychology entirely and look at quantum mechanics?
Oh my God, yes.
What if our dreams are actually just parallel universe versions of ourselves? Like, are we simply tuning into the multiverse frequency when our conscious mind goes offline?
This is exactly the kind of late-night, unhinged overthinking I live for.
Yes.
Because honestly, what if there is an alternate timeline where I actually did drop everything to manage a fast food franchise during the apocalypse?
I mean, you would be great at it.
Thank you. That explains why the sensory details are so vivid. When you wake up crying from a nightmare, it is not a metaphor, it is bleed-through. Another version of you just experienced that actual heartbreak, and you caught the emotional shockwave across the multiverse.
I deeply respect your absolute commitment to this delusion.
It is not a delusion, it is science.
If there is a parallel universe version of me who is perpetually silenced in every major confrontation, I sincerely hope they have learned sign language, because otherwise that timeline is a tragic existence.
So tragic.
But honestly, this entire concept of alternate timelines, overlapping realities, and the generational trauma that bleeds through them, it is the perfect thematic bridge.
It really is.
It sets the exact mission statement for what we need to dissect today.
It does. But before we cross that bridge, babes, we have been feeling the love. You have been sending in so many shady, snarky, or stupid submissions. And we love you for it.
Keep them coming.
We asked you to share the messy moments that keep you up at night, and this one listener delivered a scenario that requires immediate adjudication.
Oh, we absolutely need to convene the tribunal because
Yeah.
this submission is a digital catastrophe. Let me set the scene for you.
Okay.
Our listener wrote in confessing that they were severely sleep deprived, which is always the prologue to a terrible decision, right?
Always.
Yeah.
Nothing good happens when you are sleep deprived.
They found themselves lying in bed at 2 in the morning, falling down a hyper-specific internet spiral. And they ended up, as one does when logic fails them, on the LinkedIn profile of their current partner's ex.
No. Stop. That is a quarantine zone.
2 in the morning.
You do not wander into that specific digital neighborhood at 2 in the morning. Nothing good grows there.
Yeah.
And on LinkedIn.
It gets immeasurably worse. While aggressively scrolling through this ex's profile, presumably attempting to internally critique their corporate synergy or whatever, the listener's thumb slipped.
Oh, no.
They accidentally clicked endorse.
Oh, my.
And of all the skills to blindly validate, they endorsed their partner's ex for time management.
I am physically sweating just thinking about the panic that must have washed over them.
Yeah.
Endorsing the ex on LinkedIn.
For time management.
It is the most sterile, yet deeply intimate, humiliating footprint you can leave.
The irony is just magnificent. You are actively wasting your own time in the middle of the night, driven by insecurity, and you inadvertently reward the subject of your jealousy with a glowing recommendation for their calendar skills.
It is so bad.
It is Shakespearean. So we need a verdict. We have to break the mechanics of this down. Was this action shady, snarky, or just straight up stupid?
It is pure, concentrated, messy emotion. It is a total disaster.
Yeah.
But part of me almost wants to defend it as accidental snort.
Really? You are defending this.
Hear me out. It is such a bizarre, backhanded power move. Imagine being the ex and receiving that notification. Like, I see you, I am monitoring your career trajectory, and frankly, I respect your punctuality. It is psychological warfare.
See, I have to completely dismantle that defense right now.
Why?
If we analyze the intent versus the outcome, it entirely lacks the intentionality required for true shade, and it lacks the wit required for snark. Shade requires strategy, babes.
Okay, fair.
This was purely a mechanical failure born of poor impulse control. The verdict is overwhelmingly, unequivocally stupid. It is a straight-up, stupid, unforced error. But knowing you, I welcome your pushback.
My pushback is that sometimes a stupid action accidentally breaks the matrix and becomes brilliant. Just think about the absolute spiral happening in that ex's brain the next morning.
Oh, they were definitely confused.
Right. They check their email over coffee and they see that their former partner's new partner has professionally endorsed them. They are questioning their entire reality.
They probably thought it was a virus.
Did they meet at a conference and forget? Is this a threat? It is accidental genius.
Accidental genius is still fundamentally an accident, but I appreciate your chaotic defense of their ruined digital footprint.
I will always defend the chaos.
Babes, we are already spiraling. Let's get into the episode.
We absolutely need to, because we watched Season 4, Episode 2 of The Way Home, titled Blinded by the Light, and I have been practically vibrating with the need to discuss the sheer volume of emotional damage this show just handed us.
It was a heavy one.
We need to unpack the generational delusion, the toxic pacts, and the timeline logistics. And we have to start right in the present day because the writers did not give us a single second to breathe.
Not a second.
The episode opens with Elliot. He is just standing there, staring at a photograph of his mother, Tessa. And then The clock on his desk strikes 11:11, and a mysterious song starts playing.
We need to analytically deconstruct the 11:11 trope right out of the gate here.
Please do.
In the broader cultural zeitgeist, right, 11:11 is associated with synchronicity. It is a magical minute where you are supposed to make a wish. It represents hope, alignment, the universe winking at you.
Very Instagram wellness girly.
Exactly. But we are in Port Haven. In the Landry Augustine cinematic universe, 11:11 does not mean your crush is going to text you. It means imminent structural trauma. It is a mathematical countdown to emotional devastation.
It really is. It is a total omen. And seeing Elliot in that specific moment, I have to confess something to you.
Oh, boy.
I've spent the last 3 seasons judging Elliot so harshly. I have rolled my eyes at his rigid perfectionism, his constant need to police Kat's time traveling, his stubbornness.
You really have been an Elliot hater.
I have. But watching him stare at that photo, grappling with the profound foundational realization that his mother didn't just leave but vanished into a magical sinkhole, it completely shattered my judgment.
Wow. Growth.
I suddenly empathized with his pain so deeply. The psychological weight of that abandonment is staggering.
Well, let's examine the architecture of his personality through that specific lens. Why is Elliot so rigid? Why does he obsess over the rules of time travel? Because he is a man whose foundational childhood experience was utter unpredictability.
Exactly.
The person who was supposed to be his permanent anchor, his mother, simply evaporated. So he constructed a personality entirely out of control and reliability.
He became the rock.
He became the guy who never leaves, who always knows the rules, to overcompensate for the chaos he was born into. It is a profound defense mechanism, and that leads directly to Dell stepping up to the plate.
I loved this part.
She recognizes the spiral he is in, and she takes him out to the barn. And not just any barn, the very spot where Colton built the hideout for Elliot when he was just a kid trying to escape his empty house.
The warmth of that scene completely overwhelmed me. Dell looking him in the eye and declaring that she always secretly wanted to be his mom, that she has always viewed him as an honorary Landry. I was tearing up.
It was very emotional.
It was such a vital, healing moment of chosen family. She was essentially telling him, like, your biological mother may be a mystery, but Colton and I actively selected you. You were wanted. It was exactly what his inner child needed to hear.
It was a beautiful sentiment, but we cannot let the glow of that maternal warmth blind us to the sheer narrative whiplash that immediately follows.
Oh, God, I know.
Because Dell, in her infinite wisdom, decides Elliot needs a distraction, so she takes him to the local bar for drinks. A classic supportive move. That is, until the town bartender casually strolls over and completely scoops Dell on the whereabouts of her own grandson.
Oh, my God.
The bartender, a man who is essentially a background extra in this town's lore, casually drops the information that Jacob is currently working at a bar in Toronto, and Dell had absolutely no idea.
I physically threw my hands in the air. A bartender knows Jacob's zip code before the matriarch of the family does. Do you understand the disrespect?
It is wild.
Deli has spent over 2 decades steeped in agonizing, life-altering grief over this boy. Kat risked breaking the space-time continuum to pull him out of the 1800s. And Jacob can't even send a text message.
We really need to dissect Jacob's communication strategy, or rather, the complete lack thereof, because it is staggering.
It is non-existent.
For 3 entire seasons, the entire emotional and physical drive of this family was dedicated to his extraction. They defied physics. They engaged in historical espionage.
They nearly died.
They finally get him back to the present day, and what does he do? He gets on a bus and essentially ghosts them.
Yep.
He is apparently providing regular career updates to the local mixologist, but he is leaving Dell to find out her grandson's status over a glass of Pinot Grigio. Geographically and emotionally, he is evading them.
He is treating his family like a bad Tinder date. He just slowly backed away. And you look at Dell's face in that bar. She doesn't scream. She doesn't cry. She just quietly downs her wine. It is the exhaustion of a woman who has survived too much grief.
It really is.
But the universe wasn't done torturing Dell, because Kat comes marching back from her latest plunge into the 1925 pond, and she is completely empty-handed. No answers about Tessa.
None at all.
And seeing Elliot's renewed devastation, Dell, finally, after decades, snaps her own silence. She drops the ripped photo onto the table.
The infamous ripped photograph. Let's analyze the visual symbolism here, because the flashback we get is incredibly telling.
So telling.
We see Colton physically take a photo that features self, Dell, and a mysterious third person. He literally tears the third person out of the frame, tosses that specific piece of the image into the fire, and enforces a draconian pact. They swear to never speak of this person
The
again.
drama.
And then, back in the present, Dell drops the absolute nuclear bombshell on Elliot. She admits she has no idea where Tessa ended up, but she knows who took her.
Okay, this is where I have to pause and aggressively push back on the romance of the Landry family. I am livid about the sheer audacity of Dell keeping this secret for decades. Think about the ethics of this. Elliot has spent his entire life internalizing the idea that his mother looked at him, decided he wasn't enough, and walked away. He carried that shame in his bones.
Yes, he did.
And Dell has sat across from him at thousands of dinners, watched him struggle, and known this entire time that someone specifically took her. How can we forgive that level of toxic secret keeping?
You are hitting on the exact flaw in their generational dynamic. They operate under the guise of protection, right? Dell and Colton justified this pact as a quarantine zone around a nuclear secret, convincing themselves that silence would protect Elliot from a darker truth.
But it didn't protect him.
Analytically, withholding a foundational truth about a person's parentage isn't protection, it is emotional manipulation.
Say it louder.
Dell claims she thought Tessa simply left Elliot behind so that she and Colton could raise him. But to allow a child to believe he was discarded like trash when she had an actual lead on the person responsible for his mother's disappearance, that is an emotional Ponzi scheme.
An emotional Ponzi scheme.
Yes. She was borrowing peace from the future to avoid conflict in the present, and now the entire structure is collapsing.
It is brutal. It completely reframes her entire relationship with Elliot. Like, I love you like a son, but I will lie to your face for 30 years to protect my husband's pride. It is so dark. And to understand why a family would resort to that level of suppression, we have to look at the roots of the rot.
You really do.
We have to examine where this generational mess actually started.
Exactly. Because the present-day trauma is just the fruit, right? The roots are buried 100 years deep, which means we need to seamlessly transition out of this present-day heartbreak and dive headfirst into the glitz, glamour, and absolute criminality of the 1925 timeline.
Let's go to the Roaring Twenties. So, Kat emerges from the pond, dripping wet in the middle of a dry field, and she is immediately intercepted by a young, flapper-era Fern Landry.
The aesthetic was unmatched.
Immaculate. Fern takes one look at Kat, who is looking incredibly suspicious and soaking wet, and casually dubs her Kitty Cat, stating she looks like something the cat dragged in.
It is a sharp, witty character introduction that establishes Fern as someone who is not easily intimidated. But we can't just enjoy the sass, because that nickname immediately triggered a massive analytical spiral across the fandom.
Oh my god, the Reddit theories.
Let's look at the etymology of the nicknames in this show. Kitty Cat shares a distinct phonetic connection to Casey.
I know. Is Casey somehow a descendant of Cat? Is Casey a family nickname that gets passed down through the generations like a cursed heirloom? Every single word spoken in this show feels like a breadcrumb.
It really does. Everything is a clue.
But even more suspicious than the nickname was the tiny, almost imperceptible murmur Fern makes right after she meets Cat. She turns around to walk away, and under her breath she whispers, "Not the one because you're a girl."
That is the pivotal line of the 1925 sequence. Let's deconstruct the mechanics of that assumption. Not the one. This implies two things. First, Fern is actively anticipating the arrival of a stranger. Second, she specifically expects this stranger to be male.
Exactly.
So the structural question becomes, who is the prophecy about? Who is she waiting for?
Let's run down the suspect list. Is she waiting for a specific male time traveler? Could it be Griffin Landry, the brother who got ripped out of the photograph?
That is a strong possibility.
Or could it be Sam Bishop? We know Sam has been hovering around the periphery of the modern Landry women, acting like he knows things he shouldn't. Is Sam slipping through time? Or is she waiting for an Augustine? Because right on cue, who pulls up in a dusty old car? Percy and Mo Augustine.
Ah, yes. The Augustine rats. And they're literally referred to as rats in this timeline. They are not the esteemed historians of the present day. They are gritty, opportunistic bootleggers running illicit liquor through a coastal town.
It gave me such mental whiplash. You look at the Augustine family tree and you have to laugh. How do you go from these ratty, criminal smugglers in the 1920s to sweet, poetic Susanna in the 1800s to Vic, the earnest, slightly awkward historical society guy in the present day?
It is a profound evolutionary curve. It proves that wealth and respectability in Port Haven are largely built on forgotten crimes.
So true.
But what is truly fascinating in this era is Fern's absolute rejection of the traditional Landry narrative. Look at her lifestyle. She isn't tying herself to the grueling agricultural reality of the farm. She is working as a society columnist at the Herald newspaper.
I love that for her.
She is living out of a Murphy bed hidden in the walls of the press room. She is fiercely guarding her independence in an era where women were expected to simply marry into security.
She's living her absolute best modern woman life, pulling the bed out of the wall, hoarding fabulous feathered dresses. But you cannot be an independent woman in a soap opera without a love triangle aggressively hunting you down. Enter Cliff Kane.
The temperance inspector. The man officially hired by the government to enforce prohibition in a town whose entire shadow economy is built on ignoring it.
The moment he walked in, the chemistry was electric. It was instant crackling sparks. I am a complete sucker for the enemies to lovers trope, and watching her try to cover up her nightgown while simultaneously sassing a federal agent. I was swooning. The romantic tension was thick enough to cut with a knife.
The tension is undeniable, but analytically, we have to look at the massive conflict of interest brewing here. Let's trace the logistics.
Okay.
Cliff Kane, the man tasked with arresting bootleggers, ends up renting a room at the Landry farm. Fern, a woman who is deeply embedded in the social circles funding the bootleggers, facilitates this rental.
It's so messy.
You have a federal agent living on the property of the woman who is actively participating in the town's illegal alcohol-fueled high society. It is a structural nightmare just waiting to implode.
And the implosion is guaranteed, especially when you factor in the Lingermore party. Fern sneaks Kat into the Lingermore estate, and it is a full Gatsby-level spectacle. Feathers, jazz, illegal martinis flowing like water. And who is standing at the center of this law-breaking soiree pulling all the strings? Grayson Goodwin.
The apex predator of 1925 Port Haven. He owns the newspaper where Fern works, which controls the flow of information. He hosts the illegal parties, which controls the social hierarchy. And he is clearly doing back-alley deals with the Augustine rats, which controls the shadow economy. He is a man compartmentalizing a dozen deadly secrets.
And in the middle of all this calculated chaos, he stops the party to propose to Fern. He presents her with this massive, gaudy emerald ring. But did you catch the detail?
Which one?
He slips the ring onto her right hand.
But what is the logic there? Is that some obscure 1920s tradition I don't know about? Or is it a visual cue to the audience that this engagement isn't quite as legally binding or traditional as it appears? It is a very deliberate directorial choice. Placing an engagement ring on the right hand often signifies a promise rather than a legal contract.
Interesting.
But what is far more revealing than the ring is the speech Grayson gives immediately after. He announces his new creative venture, a silent film titled Cassandra of the Lighthouse, and he explicitly tells the crowd the plot. It's a tragic love story about a woman living in a lighthouse whose sailor lover tragically falls to his death.
This is the moment my brain short-circuited. We have to unpack this theory. In the present day, when Kat was interrogating Dell about the mysterious father of Fern's baby, Dell said the family lore was always that the father was a sailor who died in a tragic accident.
Oh, I see where you're going.
Do you see what is happening? Did Fern literally just steal the plot of Grayson's fictional silent movie to create a cover story for the real identity of her baby's father?
The narrative overlap is far too precise to be a coincidence. The Landry women are writers. They know how to construct a narrative to shield themselves.
Yeah.
So if we accept that the dead sailor is a fabricated cover story, the analytical question becomes, why did she need a cover story at all?
Right.
If she simply marries Grayson Goodwin, the baby is born a Goodwin. No scandal, no cover story required. The necessity of the lie implies that the marriage never happens.
Oh my God.
So who is the real father? Is it Cliff Kane, the temperance inspector, which would be a massive political scandal? Or is it Grayson, but something violent and permanent happens to him before they can legally wed, leaving her vulnerable and unwed in the 1920s?
It completely rewrites the entire bloodline. If that baby is actually a Goodwin, it means the Landry and Goodwin families merged decades before anyone realized. But before Kat can interrogate Fern about any of this, the Prohibition agents raid the party.
Absolute chaos.
It is total chaos. And in the most ridiculous reality TV moment ever, Kat literally drops a silver flask out of her dress right onto the floor in front of Cliff Kane. Fern panics and tries to cover by blurting out that Kat is a time traveler, and Cliff just laughs it off as a joke.
It's the perfect deployment of the truth as a defense mechanism. He laughs because the concept is absurd, entirely missing that she handed him a literal confession. But the most critical data point of Kat's 1925 excursion happens in the quiet moments after the raid, right before she jumps back into the pond. She asks Fern a direct question.
Yes, she says, do you know Tessa Augustine?
And Fern casually says no, it doesn't register. But then Kat adjusts her trajectory. She uses the name from the passport. She asks, what about Tessa Cooper?
The way Fern's entire face dropped, the absolute blood-draining shock. She knows that name. The name Tessa Cooper means something dangerous to her. Does she know Tessa is jumping through time? Is Tessa somehow entangled with Grayson's bootlegging syndicate? I was screaming at my screen for Kat to ask a follow-up question, but time was up.
It is a masterfully executed cliffhanger that establishes Tessa not just as a missing mother, but as an active player in the 1920s timeline. But we cannot linger in the Jazz Age because the episode forces a brutal stylistic transition.
It really does.
We are yanked from the glitzy, champagne-soaked glamour of the 1925 Lingermore party directly into the hazy, drug-fueled, groovy decay of the 1976 Lingermore party. If the walls of that estate could talk, they would need intense therapy.
The whiplash was exquisite. We watch Alice pull herself out of the pond in 1976. She is fully expecting to meet up with her mom, Kat. Instead, she gets ambushed and absolutely roasted by an older, hardened version of Fern.
She got dragged.
Old Fern looks at Alice and flat out calls her the most clueless time traveler she has ever had the misfortune of dealing with.
I have to pause and applaud the writers for Fern's consistent characterization across 50 years. Whether she is a young flapper hiding in a Murphy bed or a 70s matriarch guarding a sprawling estate, she suffers absolutely no fools. She refuses to coddle Alice. She refuses to hold anyone's hand through the pond's illogical demands. She essentially tells Alice, like, the pond sent you here for a reason. Go do the work and figure it out yourself.
And the pond's reason for sending Alice there becomes blindingly obvious about 30 seconds later. Alice is walking down the dirt road and a cherry red Corvette comes flying up. Who is behind the wheel? Evelyn Goodwin.
Naturally.
She's looking incredibly fabulous, incredibly wealthy, but also she's dragging around some of the worst taste in men I have ever witnessed on television.
You are referring, of course, to the introduction of Ash, Evelyn's new husband.
I need to take a deep breath because I need to aggressively drag Ash for a minute. The man is sitting in the passenger seat of a Corvette, funded by his wife's generational wealth, playing the bongos. The bongos.
How embarrassing.
He is reading slam poetry about the crushing monotony of small-town love. He radiates the most pretentious, insufferable trust fund hippie energy I have ever seen. He is a walking red flag wrapped in a terrible poncho.
Your visceral hatred of him is completely justified. Let's analyze Evelyn's romantic regression here, because it is tragic. You look at Evelyn's past. She had this deep, profound, intellectually and emotionally pure connection with Colton Landry.
They were soulmates.
Colton is a man of immense substance, quiet strength, and genuine talent. And after losing him, what does she do? She aggressively downgrades. She marries a man who communicates exclusively in bumper sticker philosophies while aggressively hitting a drum. It is a catastrophic lapse in judgment.
Why did she do it?
Because Ash is loud. He is the exact opposite of the quiet, earnest trauma of Port Haven. She is using his annoying noise to drown out the silence Colton left behind.
That is such a brilliant way to frame it. She is using him as human earplugs. Even young Colton, when he interacts with them, can barely mask his disgust. He looks at Ash like he's an alien. And to slice right through the awkward tension, Evelyn decides to take the group on a little field trip. Where they go?
Down into the dark, freezing, structurally unsound tunnels underneath the Lingermore estate. Naturally. Because nothing heals a strained social dynamic like a descent into a subterranean crime scene. But this is where the episode drops a massive piece of historical lore. While wandering the tunnels, Evelyn casually points out that they are standing at the exact site of a catastrophic explosion.
The lore drop.
She recites the local legend, 5 went in, 4 came out. And she ties this 1926 explosion directly to Al Capone and her own grandfather, Grayson Goodwin.
Okay, we need to pull the red string and connect the timelines here. Because where did we just leave Kat? Kat is currently standing in the summer of 1925. That means Kat is only 1 year away from a deadly historical explosion involving Grayson Goodwin, the very man who just proposed to her great-grandmother.
The timeline is shrinking.
Is Kat going to get trapped in the 1926 timeline? Is Kat one of the 5 people who go into that tunnel?
It is a terrifying mathematical convergence. The timelines are marching toward a singular point of disaster. And the theory that it was just a simple mining accident is completely shattered by what Alice discovers in the dark. She kneels down in the dirt and picks up a physical artifact, a 50-year-old bullet casing.
A bullet.
This implies that whatever happened in 1926 wasn't just an industrial accident, it was a shootout. Was Grayson running a mob hid under his own house? Was he the victim of one? The structural integrity of the Goodwin legacy is built on a murder.
It is incredibly dark. And standing in the shadow of that generational darkness finally pushes Evelyn to drop her own facade. She pulls Alice aside for a heart-to-heart, and she admits the truth. She knows her marriage to Bongo Ash is a sham. She knows he's a phony who is just using her for her family's money. But then she drops the plot twist. She just got back from the doctor. She is pregnant.
Which means we are witnessing the origin story of Lewis's father. We are watching the messy, compromised conception of the current generation of Goodwins. And Alice, fulfilling her role as the pawn's designated emotional support time traveler, has to look at this terrified woman and reassure her that she is going to be an incredible mother, regardless of how useless Ash is.
I was completely swooning over the cosmic poetry of this moment. Think about it. Alice's best friend in the present day is Max. There is massive speculation that Alice and Max are endgame, that they are destined to fall in love. And here's Alice standing in 1976, emotionally supporting the woman who is about to give birth to the man who will eventually father Max.
The layers are deep.
The Reddit theory that Alice is going to be the one to finally unite the Landry and Goodwin bloodlines is practically confirmed by this interaction. It is this beautiful, closed-loop destiny.
It is a fascinating closed-loop dynamic. The pawn is ensuring the survival of the very people Alice needs in her future. And speaking of the pawn facilitating growth, we have to talk about the mentorship moment between Alice and young Colton. Alice sits down with her grandfather, and she plays him 5-1 in, the folk song about the tunnel explosion, and then she attempts to play him an original composition.
And Colton, who cannot tell a lie when it comes to music, gives her the toughest, most necessary love. He listens to her play, and he tells her that while the song is technically good, it is completely hollow. He tells her it isn't her.
It was a tough critique.
He challenges her to stop hiding behind other people's melodies and to start bleeding into her own music. It is the exact psychological catalyst she needs to stop being a cover artist and start being a creator.
It is a profound moment of artistic inheritance. He is teaching her how to channel the Landry pain into art. But it also sparked a very subtle, fascinating side theory among the viewers. When you listen to the melody of Alice's attempted original song, it sounds suspiciously similar to the jazz piece that Fern was dancing to at the 1925 Lingermore party.
Wait, I completely missed that. Are you saying Alice's musical inspiration is actually a subconscious echo of Fern's timeline? Because if that's true, it means the pond isn't just moving bodies through time, it's moving sound.
It might be.
The layers of this show are staggering. Every single note played on a guitar in 1976 might be an echo of a piano key struck in 1925.
It suggests that time in Port Haven isn't a straight line, it's an acoustic chamber. Everything echoes. Which brings us perfectly to the cliffhanger convergence of the episode, because the writers decided to hit us with major reveals in both timelines simultaneously.
They gave us no time to breathe.
In 1976, Alice and Colton are sitting by the road and a motorcycle comes tearing past them, heading straight for the Landry farm. Colton's entire posture stiffens. The warmth leaves his voice. He ominously tells Alice that the man on the bike is his estranged brother, Griffin Landry.
We finally have a face, well, a helmet, and a name for the phantom brother, the man who was violently ripped out of the photograph. And how does this connect back to the present day? Dell explicitly told Elliot that she knows who took Tessa. The person Colton erased from the family history is Griffin.
Let the analytical debate commence, because the verbiage Dell uses is highly problematic.
Very.
What exactly does she mean when she says Griffin take Tessa? That implies a lack of agency on Tessa's part. Did he physically abduct her? Did they conspire to run away together, abandoning the family? Did he somehow force her into the pond? Or did he follow her into it? And look at Colton's reaction in the flashback. He refuses to even use Griffin's name. He calls him that person.
You do not erase your own flesh and blood from your family history, burn their image, and forbid their name from being spoken unless the betrayal is absolute and catastrophic. If Tessa, feeling trapped in her life, fell in love with Griffin and they ran off together leaving baby Elliot behind, that is a scandal massive enough to destroy a family.
It definitely is.
But what if the truth is darker? What if Tessa discovered the pond, was trying to use it to escape, and Griffin intercepted her? I am spinning out with the possibilities.
The variables are infinite. And the fact that we have to wait a week to gather more data is a crime against my analytical patience. But before we lose our minds entirely trying to map out Griffin's motives, it is time to transition into our segment breakdowns. Segment 1, Dream Logic.
Yes, this is where we apply dream logic to the show. What occurred in this episode that made absolutely zero logistical sense but somehow happened anyway, and we as the audience just nodded and accepted it.
For me, it is the sheer, unadulterated quantum convenience of the pond's mechanics.
Of course it is.
Let's break this down. Alice steps into a dirty puddle of water and is deposited on the exact geographic and temporal coordinates required to serve as a makeshift therapist for a pregnant 70s socialite. Meanwhile, Kat emerges from the water in 1925 and instantly stumbles upon the Augustine brothers, the exact specific individuals tied to the town's underground smuggling ring, precisely when she needs transportation into the city.
It's a very smart puddle.
The GPS targeting of the sinkhole is frankly insulting to the laws of physics. It operates entirely on narrative convenience rather than scientific rules.
Okay, I hear your scientific frustration, but I am going to counter with my favorite theory.
Let's hear it.
The pond is not a scientific anomaly. The pond is a sentient, highly messy, Bravo reality TV producer.
A Bravo producer.
The pond knows exactly what it's doing. It is actively stirring the pot. It looked at Alice, realized she was struggling with her own identity, and said, "You know what this teenager needs? She needs to witness the collapse of a toxic marriage to fuel her songwriting." It looked at Kat, saw she was looking for answers, and said, "Let's drop her right in the lap of the 1920s mafia and see if she survives." The pond lives for the drama, it produces the drama, and honestly, I respect its hustle.
If we view the pond as a metaphysical reality TV producer, orchestrating conflict for its own amusement, its actions make a terrifying amount of sense. I concede the point.
Thank you.
Let's move on to segment 2, Time Warp Take. If you were granted the power to change one single action or moment in this episode, what would it be, and how would it alter the timeline?
Oh, I've been thinking about this all day. It's the conversation between Kat and Fern in 1925. Kat spends her very limited window of time desperately asking Fern about Tessa Augustine. But what if she had pivoted? What if Kat had asked Fern about Fern Landry instead?
That is a fascinating proposition. It triggers a massive butterfly effect. If Kat brings up the estranged, disgraced brother, does Fern spill the 1920s tea? Does she reveal a foundational family secret that explains Griffin's psychological profile, the exact profile that would lead him to take Tessa 50 years later?
Exactly. If Kat had just asked the right question about the right person, she could have gathered the crucial intel, brought it back through the pond to the present day, and handed it to Elliot. She could have sat him down and said, "Here is the exact history of the man who took your mother. Here is his motive. It had nothing to do with you." She could have surgically removed decades of his abandonment trauma with one conversation. It breaks my heart to see them miss these opportunities.
It highlights the ultimate tragedy of their investigations. They are so hyper-focused on the questions they think matter that they completely ignore the peripheral characters who actually hold the key to the cipher. Which leads us perfectly into segment 3, Too Calm to Trust. Who in this episode is acting a little too smooth, a little too unbothered, and why does it make them incredibly suspicious?
Grayson Goodwin. There is no other answer. Absolutely 100% Grayson Goodwin.
I am in complete agreement. Let's look at his behavioral baseline. The man is running a massive newspaper. He is secretly managing a highly illegal bootlegging empire. He is dealing with ratty smugglers who could turn on him at any moment.
He's juggling a lot.
And yet, he is casually proposing marriage in the middle of an active police raid. He is reciting poetry about silent movies while the federal temperance inspector is literally kicking down his front door. His heart rate never elevates. He is entirely too polished.
He is radiating high-functioning sociopath energy. No normal human being is that smooth while their illegal empire is being raided.
Analytically speaking, a man who remains that unnervingly calm while balancing felony commerce and high society politics is a man who is hiding a capacity for lethal violence. If we tie his demeanor back to the 1926 tunnel explosion, the lore that 5 went in, 4 came out, I guarantee you Grayson's calm exterior is a mask. He knows how to eliminate a problem without breaking a sweat. But I know you have a wilder theory about his identity, so let's hear it.
Okay, I am spiraling over this, but stay with me. What if Grayson Goodwin is actually Sam Bishop?
Okay, here we go.
Think about the logistics. We know for a fact that time travel exists in this universe. We know Sam has been hovering around the Landry family in the present day, acting entirely too familiar, practically ageless and full of secrets he refuses to share. What if Sam is a time jumper who adopts different identities across the decades? What if the suave, wealthy man who proposes to Fern in 1925 is the exact same man fixing a truck in 2024?
That theory would require a level of shapeshifting and temporal manipulation that the pond has not yet demonstrated. However, given that we've already established we are operating under Bravo producer logic, I cannot entirely rule it out. Your delusion is highly contagious. Let's finish up with segment 4, emotional whiplash. What specific moment in this episode had you feeling entirely contradictory emotions at the exact same time?
We have to go back to the present day. Dell and Elliot sitting at the bar. That conversation gave me the most severe emotional whiplash of the entire series.
Break down the emotional timeline for us.
Okay, so phase 1, you are feeling deeply, profoundly moved. Dell looks at Elliot, a man who is drowning in the belief that he is unlovable, and she calls him an honorary Landry. She confesses that she always wished she was his biological mother. It is the ultimate validation he has craved his entire life. You are crying. You feel the generational healing happening in real time. It is beautiful.
And then comes phase 2.
And then, literally 5 minutes later, the other shoe drops, and you are enraged. You feel completely, violently betrayed. Because she reveals that she has known who took his mother this entire time.
It really ruins the moment.
The absolute toxicity of hoarding that secret while watching him suffer for 30 years completely incinerates the beautiful maternal moment they just shared. I went from wanting to reach through the screen and hug Dell to wanting to flip the table and scream at her. The duality is unacceptable.
It is the stark definition of conditional love. She essentially communicated like, I love you like a son, but I will still prioritize protecting my husband's decades-old pact over your psychological well-being. The duality of Dell's character is fascinating from a narrative standpoint, but if we view her as a guardian to Elliot, her actions are completely indefensible.
They really are. I need a nap just to process the sheer emotional toll this show extracts from my nervous system.
Well, before we sign off and let you take that nap, I must leave you and the Snark Squad with one final, deeply provocative realization that we haven't fully explored yet. Let this thought haunt you until our next discussion.
Oh God, I'm bracing myself. What is it?
We now know definitively that Grayson Goodwin was residing in Lingermore during the catastrophic 1926 explosion where 5 went in and 4 came out. We also know that he proposed to Fern Landry in 1925 and she accepted the ring.
Right.
So if she follows through and marries him, she is living at Lingermore in 1926. Is Fern the one who doesn't come out of the tunnel?
Oh my God, wait, I didn't even think of that.
Or does Grayson die in those tunnels, leaving Fern as a pregnant, unwed mother in the ultra-conservative 1920s? A woman who suddenly has to invent a tragic fictional story about a sailor who fell from a lighthouse to cover up the scandal of carrying a dead bootlegger's illegitimate child.
I have full-body goosebumps. I am literally unwell. That reframes the entire origin of the family tree. Everything we know is built on a lie.
Just a little structural reality for you to mull over while you sip the rest of that mimosa.
Babes, I need a much stronger drink after that. Thank you to the Snark Squad for hanging out and drinking mango mimosas with us today. This show is tearing our sanity apart in the absolute best way possible.
Please remember to share this spiraling conversation with a friend and rate and review us wherever you listen. Your support actively feeds our delusion and justifies our theories.
It really does. Bates, we started this whole thing talking about dreams and vocal paralysis, and somehow we ended up questioning the nature of reality, timelines, and the genetic makeup of the entire Goodwin family. Again.
Which is exactly the chaotic space where we belong.
Stay dreamy, stay curious, and we will see you on the Snark side.